It's straightforward. It's what the American people want and what they need, and we need to get started right now. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
President.
Senator from Illinois.
I ask consent the quorum call be suspended
Without objection.
and consent to speak in morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, there was a troubling report recently released by the U.S. Public Interest Research Group. It's entitled The Campus Debit Card Trap. The report from PIRG documents how colleges and universities across the country have signed deals with financial service companies to provide campus debit cards and prepaid credit cards to students. Sometimes these debit cards are linked to a student checking account, and many times the school's name will appear on the card. In some cases, the student ID card is turned into a bank credit card. We're also seeing colleges and universities make deals in which banks issue prepaid debit cards to make financial aid disbursements to students. Now, when they're managed appropriately, debit and prepaid cards can be a good thing for students. It can give them an effective way to conduct transactions and receive their student aid payments. But unfortunately, as the PIRG research found, some of these campus debit card arrangements raise some serious questions. Why did the U.S. PIRG title its report Campus Debit Card Trap? Well, you guessed it. Many students are being charged unreasonable fees that are costing them and the country millions of dollars. According to the U.S. PIRG report, 15 financial institutions have debit or prepaid card contracts with 878 campuses that serve more than 9 million students. It's a big business. 42% of all students nationwide go to school on these 878 campuses. It's a lucrative business for financial institutions. There's a lot of money to be made from fees on college debit cards, especially when you start charging fees on the billions of dollars dispersed each year in federal student aid. So the federal money is passing through these cards to the students. The financial institutions are making money in the process. As the U.S. PIRG report showed, some of the fees being charged are clearly unreasonable. One of the most egregious fees is a per-transaction fees on students for using a PIN number on debit purchase instead of a signature. One of the largest campus debit card companies, Hire One, currently charges students 50 cents every time the student enters his PIN number at a checkout. PIN-based transactions are supposed to be more secure than signature transactions. But this deal actually penalizes the students for using PIN numbers, which are supposed to be more secure. Another unacceptable fee is the ATM balance inquiry fee that some banks charge. This penalizes students who check on their balances to make sure they don't overdraw their accounts or incur an overdraft fee. So why would you discourage a student from checking on their balance so they don't overdraw their account? Some banks charge inactivity fees when a student's charged $10 a month if they aren't using the account after 6 months. In other words, if the student isn't using the card, racking up fees by making purchases, the financial institution still charges $10 each month, so it's going to get the money either way. And of course, there are mysterious fees like Hire One's $50 lack of documentation fee. That's what they call it. They recently abandoned this, not to mention the obscure and unreasonable overdraft fees. Not only do these fees eat away at the limited money these students have for books, food, and living expenses, but these fees also cut into taxpayer-subsidized student aid dollars. Student aid should be used to aid students, period, not banks. We should not allow financial institutions to take a slice off of taxpayer-subsidized student aid disbursements through unreasonable fees. And we shouldn't have debit card deals between financial institutions and colleges that leave students holding the bag. Colleges and universities should negotiate for the students, for the best deal for them, the lowest fees, the best consumer protection. And we need these deals to be fully transparent. Students often think, well, wait a minute, if the university is recommending this bank or this school ID or this debit card, then it must be approved by the school. The terms of the deal ought to be clear to the students so they can make the right choice. In addition, if a school receives incentives or kickbacks for providing exclusive access to the students, there's an inherent conflict of interest that at least ought to be disclosed. So I wrote a letter, along with Senator Jack Reed and Congressman Peter Welch, calling on the 15 financial institutions mentioned in the PIRG report to immediately discontinue several of the worst fees that were highlighted and disclosed their contracts with colleges and universities. I'm pleased that some financial institutions are responding to this PIRG report, but more needs to be done. Fortunately, there are colleges and universities out there that are ready to step up. Soon after the PIRG report came out, I met with the president of a university in Illinois that uses prepaid Visa debit cards to disperse Title IV student aid. Students at this school were being charged some of the fees that were mentioned in the PIRG report, such as the inactivity fee and a fee for checking on the balance on your account. When I alerted the president of the university to these fees, he immediately responded and agreed that he thought that was just unreasonable. He said he'll work to promptly address this issue for the benefit of the students. Now, I hope other leaders of colleges and universities who try to convince students and their families that they're truly their friends will be their friends when it comes to these debit cards. In the days to come, I'm going to work with the regulators at the Department of Education and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and with higher education and financial communities to take the tricks and traps out of the campus debit card programs. Let's give our college students who are already borrowing money, deep in debt, struggling to pay their bills a break. Let's not increase the debt that they're going to carry out of school trying to enter into the job market. I thank my colleagues who are already working with me on this, and I urge others to join me. Mr. President, I ask at this point that my next statement be placed at a separate part of the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, since last July, the Veterans Administration's Caregivers Program has been providing the families of severely disabled Iraq and Afghanistan veterans with the support they deserve to care for their loved ones. I'd like to mark the one-year anniversary of this program by taking a few minutes to talk about its impact on families across America. Mr. President, the Caregivers Program was originally conceived by then-Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. She came up with this notion to help those caregivers who were staying at home with disabled veterans. Many of them, parents and spouses, make considerable sacrifices to make sure that their disabled vet has the very best love and care in the place they want to be, right in their home. And sometimes it's a hardship, not just the medical requirements, but sometimes the financial requirements. So we passed the Caregivers Program. Originally conceived by Senator Clinton, and with the assistance of Senator Akaka, it became the law of the land. Here's what it said. For the veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan who came home with a disability and needed a caregiver to make sure they could go about their daily routine, we would say first to the caregiver, we're going to provide you with the medical training you need so that you can take care of this vet in terms of their personal needs. Secondly, we will provide you with a respite. If you need time off to go spend a few days somewhere to rest and relax and recharge your batteries, we'll find a nurse or someone to come in and take care of that vet so that you can have a little time to yourself. And third, if there's a financial need, an economic hardship, we pay up to $3,000 a month, not a huge sum of money, but up to $3,000 a month to the caregivers who are willing to help. I just had a group of wounded warriors in my office the other day, and they talked about what this meant to some of these families. It really meant whether their homes would be foreclosed upon or not. So when you think about it, the alternative is institutional care for these veterans, not nearly the level we want, the kind of care we would want to have. Instead, they're at home with someone they love at a fraction of the cost of institutional care, and we're just giving the helping hand to the caregivers. So let me show you a couple photographs here, because these are some stories that I think are important for you and everyone to know about. This is a family I know pretty well, and they're from North Carolina. Eric Edmondson served in the United States Army, and Eric is shown here with his wife Stephanie, his daughter Gracie, 7 years old, and his baby son Hunter, who's almost 2 years old. Eric served in the Army, was injured, and during the course of surgery had complications and ended up quadriplegic, unable to speak. They almost gave up on him in the VA system. They didn't know what to do with him. They talked to his father about sending him at the age of about 24 into a nursing home. His dad blew his stack, said, "You're not going to do that to my boy." And he got on the internet and he started asking questions, and he ended up with Eric being admitted at the Rehab Institute in Chicago. That's where I met him, this North Carolina family. And his dad, Ed, said, my son's going to get the best care no matter what. And because he worked so hard and pushed so hard, Eric got the care that he needed. I can remember visiting him in his hospital room and saying that I wanted to come back from time to time, see how he was doing in Chicago. And so I came a few weeks later, and his mom said, Eric has a gift for you. And I said, for me, a gift? What is it? And she said, I'll show you. He and his dad, his mom and dad walked to the side of his wheelchair, lifted him up, and Eric took 3 steps. There wasn't a dry eye in that room. Tears of joy all the way around that this man they'd given up on was taking these steps. And his mom and dad said, he's supposed to check out of here on Memorial Day. And he's going to walk out of the front door of this hospital in his full dress uniform. Can you be there? And I said, I wouldn't be anywhere else. And so I came, as did the mayor of Chicago and a lot of press, and watched Eric walk out of that hospital. It was one of the happiest days I can ever remember. Stephanie was waiting for him with his little daughter Gracie, and they moved in North Carolina back to their home. Mom and Dad gave up their business, devoted their lives to him. They are living with his family to make sure that Eric has a life. And they have a brand new baby boy. I went down and visited in their home. It's one of those stories where some local vets and good people said, we'll build you a home at no expense, that you can get around in your wheelchair. It's just a terrific, wonderful story of a brave family that worked hard to give Eric a life and all the neighbors and friends that sustained him. Well, I can tell you that Eric's story went a chapter further. His dad came to me and said, have you ever heard of the caregivers bill that Hillary Clinton introduced? And I said, no. And he said, well, she's leaving the Senate to be Secretary of State, and would you take a look at it? And I said I would. And as a result of that, I worked with Senator Okaka, Senator Inouye, and the President. We signed it into law. And as a result of it, families just like the Edmondsons will get the helping hand they need to give Eric the kind of care he needs. The Iraq War is over, but his struggle from that war will continue. And we want to make sure he has the loving care that he needs throughout his life. Let me tell you about another family from Clinton, Illinois. Oops, I got the wrong. Let me get the right. I want to make sure I've got this. Maybe I don't have a photo on this. Nathan Flory and his caregiver mother, Deanna. Nathan was a military police officer in Iraq who suffered an aneurysm while on duty in 2008. His recovery took 15 months, and at one point it was suggested that Nathan should go to a group home, but his mother refused to allow that to happen and said, no, he's coming home with me. Deanna has taken care of him ever since. They thought that Nathan would never wake up, never regain consciousness, but with his mother's support, he's exceeded everyone's expectations. He's received his associate's degree. He's working on a bachelor's degree. Deanna says the caregiver program gives her a support system so that she doesn't feel like she's caring for Nathan alone. It's a common refrain. Another caregiver named Beth, who I spoke with this spring in downstate Illinois near Marion, pointed out that this support from the caregivers program gave her the flexibility to be able to care for her husband full-time. These are the kinds of families we wanted to help. When we started, we thought a few thousand Iraq and Afghanistan veteran families might apply. As it turns out, these wounds that lead to this type of care are more prevalent than we thought, and the families' hearts are even bigger than we imagined. So far, 5,153 families have qualified for the caregivers program. Think about that, 5,000 plus. They've taken the training to provide quality care for their loved ones in the comfort of their own homes. This includes Deanna and Beth and 129 families in my state, and I'll bet you that there's some families in Minnesota. This is an interesting and amazing story as well. This is a family from Oak Lawn, Illinois. Yuri and Amy Zimsley. I'm sorry. They're in the center of this photo. This is Amy and Yuri Zimsley. I was connected with them several years ago after I read about them in a Chicago newspaper. They became strong advocates for the caregiver program, and they spread the word all over the state of Illinois, including at this event in Chicago this fall. Yuri was a Marine serving in Afghanistan and Iraq In 2006, he came back to the United States for a surgery at a military hospital where he suffered complications from a burst appendix and was left with a severe brain injury. When she got the news, Amy drove to the hospital and put her whole heart and her whole life into caring for Yuri. At the time, they weren't married. But Amy said, I made my commitment to him before this. They got married after he suffered this grievous injury. Some Isleys qualified for the caregiver program last summer. As Amy told the Sun-Times in an update to their story, it's good to be recognized for what I've been doing and other people have been doing for so many years. Mr. President, let me close with a brief update on Eric Edmondson, who I started out talking about. His father, Ed, tells me in a recent note that enrollment in the program went smoothly, the caregivers program. His wife, Beth, who gave up her health insurance when she left her job to care for her son, this disabled vet, now has her health insurance back thanks to the program. Eric's doing well. He's back hunting and fishing. His dad set up a special arrangement where he could literally still go out and go hunting. He just loved it so much, and go fishing with his dad. And he recently completed a multi-state hunting trip sponsored by the Wounded Warrior Project. Eric also received the 2011 Pathfinder Award from the Safari Club International in recognition of the way he's explored life undeterred by his injuries. As part of the award, he's going to head to South Africa in September to hunt big game. Who would have imagined that this young man, abandoned by our system and said that he would spend the rest of his life alone, virtually alone in a nursing home, now has such a full life? As his father said in his note to me, Eric works through his challenges. He will not be disabled by them. Always a warrior. Mr. President, I'm pleased the Caregivers Program has been able to help veterans across America, over 5,000 of them, Illinois, North Carolina, and everywhere. I encourage anyone who's following this statement on the floor of the Senate or knows of an Iraq or Afghanistan veteran who may qualify for the Caregivers Program to get more information at www.caregiver.va.gov, www.caregiver.va.gov. Mr. President, I now ask consent my final statement here be placed in a separate part of the record as well.
Without objection.
Last Sunday, I went to Gardner Townships, right outside of Springfield in Illinois, met with a group of farmers to talk about the drought. And we were across the street from a cornfield, and I've seen these since I was a little kid. And if you looked at it driving by, you'd think just another cornfield. Well, the farmers took me into the cornfield, and we started looking at the corn on the stalks, and it's a disaster. The drought has really taken its toll. As of last week, my entire state is suffering through at least a moderate drought, and 33 counties have been declared in severe drought. They have joined 1,000 other counties in 26 states that have already been declared disaster areas by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Some people think it's the worst drought that we've had in 25 years. I'm afraid they could be right. No one knows it better or sees it before our farmers, which I learned, of course, when I made this visit. Some of this corn crop is just going to be flat out lost. They chop it off ground level, let it dry out, and try to feed it to livestock. But it's going to get worse if the drought continues. We need rain, and we need it desperately. Not just a little rain, but level of consistent, meaningful accumulation. The primary tool available to producers to help them get through this is crop insurance. Taxpayers help the crop insurance program by subsidizing about 62% of the premiums, but it's a better deal than disaster payments, which are unfortunately massive in amount and don't reward good conduct. The basic crop insurance program rewards those producers who are trying to protect themselves from these outcomes. I talked to Secretary Vilsack with the Department of Agriculture last week. I know that they're watching this disaster situation across Illinois and across the nation as, unfortunately, it increases. The benefits that are available to local farmers are low-cost loans, low-interest loans that they can take out to get through this while they're waiting for their crop insurance payouts. These farmers don't want a handout, but they have no choice. They've got to get through this year so they can get into next year. The loans are not going to solve the problem, but they'll help them address the problem. Now, Mr. President, there's a political thing we can do. I wish we could pass a bill to create rain. That'd be a nice start, but we're not. But we did pass the Farm Bill. 64 senators, Democrats and Republicans, voted for the Farm Bill. Debbie Stabenow of Michigan and Pat Roberts of Kansas, Democrat and Republican, worked through a bipartisan bill when most people said they didn't have a chance, and they did it. Did a great job on it. And then they sent it over to the House. The House, unfortunately, has not been able to move a farm bill. This is a lot like the story we heard before on the transportation bill. Here's a bill critically important for farmers, many of whom are facing disasters like droughts right now, and the House needs to get moving. I hate to put pressure on them, but that's what senators do to House members, and they try to do the same to us. If they fail to pass a farm bill, it's going to reduce the opportunities to help our farmers through this drought. So I'm encouraging all the members of the House of Representatives, Democrats and Republicans, if you can't come up with your own bill, at least vote on the Senate bipartisan bill. It's a bill that's going to give us a chance to help our producers in rural America who are facing a natural disaster. I think it's, as they face these natural disasters, we shouldn't be creating political disasters to make it worse. So I call on the House of Representatives, before you leave for the August recess, pass a farm bill, get to conference, get the job done. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
President,
The Leader.
I ask unanimous consent to call the quorum be terminated.
Without objection.
I now ask unanimous consent to proceed to executive session and calendar number 663, which is the nomination of Michael A. Shipp of New Jersey.
Without objection, the clerk will report.
Nomination, the judiciary, Michael A. Shipp of New Jersey to be United States District Judge for the District of New Jersey.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk with respect to the Shipp nomination. In fact, it may already be
The
there.
clerk will report the cloture motion.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the nomination of Michael A. Shipp of New Jersey to be United States District Judge for the District of New Jersey, signed by 17 senators, as follows.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
I now ask consent that the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now ask unanimous consent that we proceed to a period of morning business
Without objection.
and that senators be allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes each during the period of morning business.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that S3412 and S3413, which are both at desk, be considered as having been read twice and placed on the calendar.
Without objection.
There are two bills at the desk. I ask for their first reading.
The clerk will read the title of the bills for the first time.
S3414, a bill to enhance the security and resiliency of the cyber and communications infrastructure of the United States. H.R. 5872, an act to require the President to provide a report detailing the sequester required by the Budget Control Act of 2011 on January 2, 2013.
Mr. President, I now ask for a second reading of both of these matters and object to my own request.
Objection having been heard, the bills will be read for a second time on the next legislative day.
Mr. President, I now ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 2 p.m. on Monday, July 23rd. That following the prayer and the pledge, journal proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for use later in the day. And at that time that I be recognized. That at 5 p.m., the Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 663, the nomination of Michael A. Shipp to be a United States District Judge for the District of New Jersey, with 30 minutes of debate equally divided and controlled in the usual forum. Further, that the clerk's vote on the Shipp nomination be at 5:30 p.m. on Monday.
Without objection.
Next roll call vote, Mr. President, will be at 5:30 on Monday. If there is no further business to come before the Senate, ask it adjourned under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Monday.
Republicans today blocked a bill that would have cut taxes